The Stillness Within, #5, Dancing in Shadows. When two observers finally stop observing, this story is part of the Stillness Within collection, following former journalist Liam Harding's journey on a Greek island. Following the events of A Stranger Among Us, Liam and Sophie meet again at another village celebration, where they must decide whether to remain observers or finally join the dance. While each story stands alone, you can read or watch the previous installments to follow Liam's full journey from isolation to connection. Previously, after maintaining careful distance from village life for a year, Liam found himself drawn back into the community during the festival. When photographer Sophie arrived in A Stranger Among Us, he recognized his own observer's habits in her work. The notebook lay closed on the table next to Sophie's camera. Liam's fingers twitched toward it as another burst of laughter drew his attention. A perfect opening line formed in his mind. The night air shimmers with possibility, lantern light catching on broken plates like stars fallen to earth. He let it fade without writing it down. The night air shimmers with possibility, lantern light catching on broken plates like stars fallen to earth. Sophie noticed his gesture. Hard to stop, isn't it? She nodded toward her camera.
I keep seeing frames everywhere. The way Marina's youngest holds that candle. How the shadows dance on the whitewashed walls.
Professional hazard, Liam said. Everything becomes material. Another line surfaced. The bouzouki player's fingers move like memory across the strings.
He pushed it away, but more phrases crowded in. Wine flows like stories here. Each glass raised contains a lifetime of tradition. The square had transformed since morning. Lanterns swayed overhead, their light pooling between patches of darkness. Someone had scattered olive branches and rosemary along the tables, their scent mixing with grilled meat and sweet wine. An old woman Liam knew only as Kyria Maria shuffled past, pressing a plate of honey-drenched lukumades into his hands. The gesture would make a perfect detail in his notebook. Her papery hands, the way she patted his cheek like a grandson, how she glanced meaningfully between him and Sophie before moving on. But he left the moment unrecorded. Sophie watched the old woman weave through the crowd.
That would have been a beautiful shot. The way her black dress catches the light. How everyone makes space for her without seeming to move.
Her hand strayed toward her camera but stopped short.
You're still composing shots with your eyes.
You're still writing in your head.
He couldn't deny it. Every moment seemed to demand documentation, the children chasing each other through the square. Their laughter ricochets off ancient walls, youth making time forget itself. The village men arguing good-naturedly over a backgammon board, dice rattle like fate's own teeth while fortunes turn on wooden battlefields. Yanis appeared with a bottle of his private stock raki, the clear liquid catching lantern light.
You two look too serious. This is a celebration, not a funeral.
We're practicing being present.
The way she held it, tilted just so to reflect the light, it would make a striking photograph. Her fingers tensed slightly, muscle memory reaching for a shutter that wasn't there.
Yeah, the observer's curse. Always standing outside the circle, yes? But life happens in the circle.
He gestured at the dancers gathering in the square's center.
My Marina. She used to say I spent so much time in my fishing boat, watching the village from the water, I forgot how to walk on land. Until one day, she made me dance.
The music shifted then, something slower and sweeter. Marina appeared as if summoned, taking the bottle from her husband's hands. Speaking of dancing, she said, pulling him up. They moved toward the other couples, years of practice evident in how they found their rhythm without discussion.
They make it look easy.
She was watching the dancers with a photographer's eye, noting the composition, the play of light and shadow, the way bodies created geometric patterns in space. Her camera sat untouched, though her fingers tapped an unconscious rhythm on the table. Around them, the festival whirled in perfect moments, begging to be captured. The young man who had been watching the girl in the red scarf all evening finally found his courage, approaching her table with hopeful uncertainty. A group of old men broke into spontaneous harmony, their voices carrying decades of shared songs. Children darted between tables, faces sticky with sweets, while their mothers called half-hearted warnings. Every second offered material for stories, for photographs, for memory.
Dance with me, Sophie said suddenly.
I thought we were observing.
We're always observing. Maybe that's the problem. She stood, held out her hand. One dance. No mental notes, no composed shots, just this moment.
He took her hand. It felt different from their walk earlier. No professional distance now, no careful space maintained. The music wound around them as they found their place among the other dancers. Sophie moved with the same grace she used to frame her shots, but looser now, less controlled. Liam felt his writer's mind trying to capture the moment. Her hair catches copper highlights from the lanterns. Her laugh carries notes of tomorrow's goodbye. But let the words dissolve into the simple reality of now. Other couples moved around them, Yanis and Marina, the young man and the girl in the red scarf who had finally said yes, tourists and villagers alike. In other circumstances, Liam would be noting their stories, crafting sentences about the way age and youth moved to the same rhythms, how the island's traditions absorbed newcomers into its dance. Instead, he just moved with Sophie, aware of how her hand felt in his, how she fit against him when the music pulled them closer.
Stop thinking, Sophie murmured, reading his expression.
Stop composing, he countered, catching how her gaze had drifted to the interplay of light and shadow across the dancers. She laughed and deliberately closed her eyes. After a moment, he did the same. The music flowed around them, through them. No framing, no narrative, no careful distance. Just the warm night, the smell of rosemary, the feeling of being here, completely here, while the stars wheeled overhead and the future waited at a distance. The musicians began another song, slower than the last. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the square, waves brushed against the shore with ancient patience. The sound would make a perfect metaphor, Liam thought, but for once he didn't try to capture it in words. Sophie's head rested against his shoulder, and he knew without looking that the moment would make a striking photograph. Their silhouettes against the lantern light, the suggestion of movement in stillness. But her camera remained on the table, untouched. Later they would return to their tools. Professional habits would resurface. They would begin to notice and record again, to maintain their observer's distance. But for now, they moved together in the space between one song and the next, between what could be captured and what could only be lived. The young man whispered something that made the girl in the red scarf laugh. Yanis called for more wine. Someone started singing an old song that made the older couple smile with recognition. Perfect moments for a photograph, a paragraph, a memory. But Sophie's camera stayed on the table, Liam's notebook remained closed, and they kept dancing as the shadows shifted and the lantern light turned everything to gold. Around them, the festival continued its ancient rhythm. Children dozed at their parents' feet, the backgammon players packed away their board, and couples swayed to songs they had danced to for decades. Every moment offered itself as material, as composition, as story. But for once, the observers simply observed nothing but each other, letting the night write its own story in the space between heartbeats. Every moment offered itself as material, as composition, as story. But for once, the observers simply observed nothing but each other, letting the night write its own story in the space between heartbeats. Dancing in Shadows is the fifth story in the Stillness Within collection. As Liam's journey continues, he discovers that some moments are better lived than captured.